And we are in February of 2026. As you already know, our big picture that we're focused on in all that we're going to be doing in Nations of in 2026 is simply all in. And so in February, this month, we're starting a new series, and it's about all in and choosing what you'll stand by when commitment becomes a decision, because making a commitment is a big decision that often becomes harder to make. And in this episode, we're going to be talking all about the fact that you can't move forward whilst living in the past, because, the hidden cost of staying where you are is far greater than actually taking that step forward. So let me start with something very direct. Some of you are being held up right now, and that's not because you lack ability or you lack, calling, or you've missed your moment. You're being held up because you're literally anchored to the past. And we know what an anchor does. It keeps you stationary, keeps you put, stay put. And why am I saying that? Or how do you know? You light up when a memory pops up, maybe on your Facebook or Instagram, social media, or your phone, and you find yourself replaying old seasons, old wins, old identities, old versions of you. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But without realizing it, nostalgia can become a hiding place. It feels safe, it feels familiar, it feels like you know where you are, and yet you cannot move forward whilst living in the past. Yes, you can honor the past, you can be grateful for the past, which is absolutely important for us. You just can't live there and still grow. So this February, we're going all in, and all in begins with one decision. You have to stop rehearsing what was and start responding to what is. So today's episode is about commitment. Now, I don't mean emotional commitment or, like this is convenient for me. But what I truly mean is the firm discipline of commitment. And one of the biggest things that quietly undermines your commitment is nostalgia. So today we're going to talk about why. And to do that, I've come up with 5 key points, which I'm sure you'd probably have more, but these five is what we're going to cover today. And one is that nostalgia feels safe, but it actually can sabotage you and keep you bonded to an old season and stop you from moving forward. Point number two is that you can easily drift off without even doing anything. And when you begin to drift, you can go so far off that you actually stop choosing to move forward. Point number three is that staying where you are has a huge hidden cost. Point number four, fear of the future often comes in disguise. And point number five is the simple fact that commitment is present tense. It's lived through your daily choices. So let's take this one at a time. Nostalgia feels safe, but it keeps you, in self-sabotage mode because it feels comfortable. It reminds you of a season where things were much clearer, you felt stronger, you felt more confident, more certain. But safety is not in the same progress. And of course, you always have to honor God for what He did then while still moving with Him in the now. The problem, though, comes when you keep returning to the past in order to feel stable. Because if you stay there, you actually stop growing both spiritually and personally and as a leader. And you also have to remember the simple but very true fact that your future will not require the same version of you. It would require a much different, better version, a grown up version, even of yourself. So this week, I wanted to name, the season that you keep returning to. What is that season in your life that you keep returning to? Write that down. And then just write one sentence underneath it. And it can be, I don't know, what did it? Maybe I was so confident, at that time. Doesn't matter what it is, just write it underneath it. And then I wanted to write, I honor God. God, I honor you and I thank you for what you did back then. And I decree and declare that I will not live there, and help me, give me the strength and the courage to move past that, because your best year is not behind you. Your best year and the best that God has for you is always ahead of you. And that starts with the here and now. So, in a practical sense, for the next 7 days, I want you to stop scrolling old photos when life feels a little bit uncertain. Thank God out loud for that season, and then just let it go. And replace the question, hey, why don't I feel like I used to, with maybe that's the question you ask. Why don't I feel like I used to? Blah, blah, blah. And I want you to replace that question now with this one. What is required of me now? And see how that, changes the way you're thinking about the situation which you're in now. Point number two is that, like, when you start to drift off, which by the way happens to all of us, it literally will stop you from choosing to move forward. You don't have to do anything, like anything at all, to drift. It just happens, and it can happen because there's always that undercurrent, which is life, challenges, fear, whatever it is, that will keep moving you further forward. And if you just keep moving further forward without intention, you could just end up right in the middle of the sea, far away from where you intended to be. This is why leaders must stay intentional. You have to be intentional because, nostalgia simply pulls you backwards, whilst the life that you're called to lead and the woman you're called to be will keep moving you forward. Here's the tricky part though. Drift can often even feel like busy. Like you could literally be busy drifting yourself away. Um, it might feel like you're doing a lot. It might feel like you're looking committed, but inside, you're delaying something. So the challenge for this week is identify one area where you've been delaying. Maybe a conversation, maybe a decision, maybe a boundary. Write it down. Then choose a date this week to actually act on it. Decide the next step. I don't mean the whole future, but just the next step. Tell somebody you trust, what you're committing to do, and remove one distraction as well that feeds your delay. It doesn't matter how big or how small, just remove one distraction. DISTRACTION, distraction that feeds that delay in your life. Point number three, staying where you are has a big hidden cost. We talk a lot about the cost of growth, but I don't think we actually talk enough about the cost of staying and doing nothing. You see, staying can cost you your confidence. It can cost you the momentum you need. It can cost you the impact you're meant to make, the relevance you're supposed to have, the influence that you're meant to have and carry, and even your joy. Because deep, deep, deep down, you were built for more, you're created for more. There is more for you, but you don't choose moving forward. If you don't choose that, your life doesn't pause, it just stays on repeat. It actually stays on repeat. So, the action I want you to take this week is write the sentence and finish it honestly. If I stay here, it will cost me dot, dot, dot. That's the question I want you to write and honestly answer it. If I stay here, it will cost me dot, dot, dot. Finish that question. And then ask yourself each morning, what would stay in just as I am? What would it cost me today? Then I want you to make one choice your future self will thank you for. And really, truly, if there's one thing you do in this season, in this month, in this week, today, stop negotiating with yourself about what you already know. Stop negotiating. Number four, fear of the future always comes in disguise. Sometimes we can call that, wisdom, but it's just fear. It might sound like, I'm just being careful, I'm waiting for the right time. Well, I'm not sure yet. Of course, there is a place for patience. There's a place for waiting for process to happen. But there's also a point where, that hesitation actually becomes avoidance. Because as a leader, to move forward and to keep moving forward every single day, being committed to, who you're called to be, carries responsibilities. And those responsibilities sometimes are heavy to carry. It's not easy. But your past cannot carry the future that God has for you. It can't. So I want you to ask yourself this question. Just pause right now and write it down. What am I afraid will be required of me if I take this step forward? You're really wanting to confront what is that fear in the middle of where you are at now and where you know you're wanting to get to. And the question is, what am I afraid will be required of me if I choose to move forward, if I moved forward? Then write, the counter statement. Even if it costs me, I will not stay stuck. And stop waiting to feel ready. Act, even if you're nervous, like Nike, would say, just do it. If you're unsure, just move in a small way. Courage will come. Courage grows as we move forward, as we take steps forward. And point number five is commitment is always present tense. Commitment is lived through your daily choices. Commitment is practical. It's what you choose when no one is watching. It's not yesterday's victories. No, it's not your intentions you had yesterday. It's everything about today. If you want to be all in, you must be all in today. Not yesterday, not last week. You must be all in, starting from now, the here and now, today. Your challenge is I want you to write the sentence. This is what I'll stand by today. And you've got to repeat it to yourself every week. I mean, so choose one non-negotiable action each day. Put your next step in your calendar. And each day, when you finish, maybe before you go to bed, ask yourself, did I live forward today? Did I live in the now, the here and now, in the present? Did I live forward today? So, in summary, you can't move forward whilst living in the past. Nostalgia can really hold you sabotage. And then drift comes. And the more it grows, the more you stop choosing forward. Staying where you are at, who you are today, has a cost. Fear would often come in disguise, and commitment lives in your choices today. And I'm not saying, hey, you've got a pressure to perform. No, you're a leader. Simple as. You are a leader. And so, as a leader, you cannot move forward whilst living in the past. As a leader, you have to remember honoring the past is healthy, but living there is costly. As a leader, you have to remember staying where you are has a cost, even if it feels comfortable. You have to remember God doesn't call us backwards, He calls us forward. He's always calling us. The invitation is to come into our future. Commitment is practical, it's present, it's lived daily. It's absolutely lived daily. So, This week, I want to choose one area where you've been stuck and take one forward step. Then stay with us this month because this month we're going to be looking all about being all in, being decisive, being really decisive as a leader. And if you want a community where commitment, we can, like, where you're supported in the commitments you're making to yourself, the Nations of Women is here for you. And I invite you to join us for our call to influence that the occult for more, that like your call to influence and change your sphere of, where you're placed, then this is for you. So again, your weekly reminder to be courageous, to be anchored, and to be all in because you cannot move forward whilst living in the past.